There's always movie news. There's always something in the news when talking about movies. And the big question, of course, that we touched a little bit on the last episode of the Welcome to Asgard podcast was, will we have any movies? Any major releases, at the very least, coming out this year in 2020? Or is because of the pandemic and because of the response of governors, because of the response of businesses, are we going to see major studios delay their major releases, all of them, until 2021 when this hopefully clears up a little bit? Again, that's still a big question. We don't really have a lot of the answers for that at this point in time because all we have are what's been given to us so far. So what do we know? For that, we know that AMC is scheduled to open towards the end of July. That is still their plan, to open 450 of the 650 American screens that they have, and then to roll out the rest of them over time. We know that Cinemark originally had plans to open up starting next week. Or actually, no, Cinemark had plans starting to open up in June. And I think there might be some locations that are open, but they've delayed theirs a little bit longer since Tenet is no longer coming out next week. Again, so next week, Tenet was supposed to have had its original release. Eventually, it was pushed back to end of July, and now it is pushed back to mid-August, and I imagine it'll be pushed back once again. Regal, of course, is kind of playing the game just like everyone else, determining basically whenever the movies are coming out, that's when they are going to try to open up as well. But as we all know, they need to have a staged reopening because they have to get people used to going back to the cinema. So what movies can they offer? Really, the only thing they can offer are old school films, classics, films that they had in release right before the pandemic started. And the question remains, is that enough to bring people back to the movies? I know for people like me, I personally think that there are some movies out right now in some of these theaters, more local right now. As I said, there's a UEC movie chain that I believe is either Tennessee bound or in my region bound. And they are getting this weekend, actually, Bloodshot, which was a film that was in release when the pandemic started, got a very quick VOD release, and I think it's already available to purchase on Blu-ray and physical media as well. So that actually gets a re-release there at my own local, and by local, again, it's still about a 30-minute drive for me, but hey, I might actually finally be able to get to see Bloodshot, because for only $5.50 to see a somewhat new film, hey, doesn't sound too bad to me, especially with their reclining seats. But they also only have really more classic films that they can show, which for me, I'm fine with. As I said, I think that is the path forward for a lot of these movie chains. Again, imagine if they focus on the classics, the ones that people love to see. That could be enough to bring in a certain crowd, or at least a certain demographic of their crowd, back to the theater to get used to coming back. So that eventually, when there are new releases, when they come out, whenever they come out, that will have, again, an established group of people ready to return. But so, for example, my local theater starting this Friday. Again, some of these movies they've had now for a while, some of them are brand new. This is the slate of films that my local theater, again, the only theater closest to me that's playing movies, has. Back to the Future, one of my all-time favorites. Again, I would like to see that back on the big screen. As I mentioned before, Bloodshot. Haven't seen that one yet. The original OG Ghostbusters, which apparently did very well recently because it got kind of a wide release at the theaters that are currently open, and apparently the re-release of the OG Ghostbusters did incredibly well. Gremlins original. I Still Believe, that's somewhat of a newer film. Irresistible, that is also a newer film that also got released on video on demand the same day. That one's, I think, has been out now for a couple of weeks, but again, video on demand as well for that film. You have OG Jaws, which, to be honest, I would like kind of to see back on the big screen. However, it would probably also terrify me, because that film has always terrified me, and still to this day has me terrified of open water. Jumanji: The Next Level, so that is the sequel to the second Jumanji film that was made. Again, I think it was a very successful remake. This one, not as great as the first one featuring The Rock, but still pretty funny, pretty entertaining, especially the impersonations being done of Danny DeVito and of Danny Glover as well. Just perfection. I could see Kevin Hart doing the Danny Glover impersonation all day long, and it would make me laugh every single time. OG Jurassic Park, just to hear that score again. Raiders of the Lost Ark, still at this theater. Starting this weekend, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. Back on the big screen. The Dark Knight, the original Fast and the Furious. And of course, Trolls World Tour for the kids. So as you can see, a mixture of old school classics going back as far as the 70s, really, with movies like Star Wars. You have more modern classics like The Dark Knight, and then you have some random hodgepodge films that did very well at the box office and are a part of successful franchises like The Fast and the Furious. And then you have those newer films too, like Irresistible, I Still Believe. And then, of course, films that were released this year but got impacted by the pandemic in Bloodshot. So this is what movie theaters are really doing right now, and this is all that they really can do. And the longer that studios delay their movie releases, guess what? The longer that we're going to have this happen, right? Where theaters, especially the major chains, are not going to be able to reopen. Because UEC, again, is a small chain. It is a small chain of theaters. And obviously, with what it's showing, the fact that it's been open now for, I think, about a month, must be doing well because it's keeping a lot of these films out. They're not changing the movies all that much. So the films that they have must be doing well enough for them to continue to do so. So who's to say that it couldn't be successful at an AMC or a Regal or a Cinemark? Now, of course, every market is different. Every neighborhood and every community is different. So those movie choices will have to also be different. But once again, it goes to the studios. Really, the studios hold all the cards here. Because they can try and say, oh, we don't want to release our movies until the theaters are back open. But at the end of the day, the theaters can't do squat. Again, the theaters cannot do anything until they have movies to show. And now a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. Albertus Magnus, Animation Commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, DivX, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Honker Chonker Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Jonathan Carney, Kenneth Camille, Lady T, Laura Story, who is the modern Major General, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, Orange at Reviews, Outpost Dyer, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, The DJD Show, and Tina B. Thank you all for being my Patreon members, and a huge shout out to my Subscribe Star members, Stand For, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, G2 Cool 99, Darkstar 57, Alex McCarthy, or J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888-209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J. Rod the Beer Guru, Nevadan G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you all so very much for being my Patreon and Subscribe Star members. Seriously, you are the wind beneath my wings. You help keep the lights on. You help support things like the giveaways for my $5 and up backers, and also allow me to do a lot of the extra stuff for the channel, including the exclusive OMB podcast that I do every couple of weeks with John, the Flick Pick of the Flick Pick channel. And yeah, thank you so much for your support. Don't want to really drag it out too long this month. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. If you want to have a name shout out, if you want to have access to giveaways, podcasts, any of that kind of stuff, check the links in the description for Patreon and Subscribe Star. You guys rock. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.